I just remember feeling so uncomfortable that I left the studio, had to go sit in the lounge, and I'm just hanging out in the lounge, just scrolling on social media, where just doing my own thing. And the artist brother comes up to me, and they're hanging out, and he's just talking. He was like, "Hey man, can I ask you a question?" I'm like, "What?" He's like, "How does it feel to be the old guy in a room full of kids?"
Welcome back to the SwaySide Connection Podcast. And who do we have on today's episode?
Hey, what's up, guys? My name's Chris Pack, class of 2000.
Class of 2000 in the house. I love it. I love seeing more of you class of 2000 people up on here. So we're starting to get into some of the other classes of Spanaway Lake High School here on the SwaySide Connection Podcast. Are you drinking anything over there? I forgot to ask you that.
Drinking H2O.
H2O. Nice. I just have myself a little coffee as always. I like having a coffee for the pacing. It just helps me pace in these interviews because that's just kind of what I do. But yeah, man, welcome to the show, man. Did you?
Thanks for having me, man.
Yeah, absolutely. How did you hear about this podcast? I kind of like curious on how like people find out about it.
Well, we follow some of the similar people on Facebook, and I would just start randomly seeing people posting themselves being on YouTube and podcasting, and I don't, these people I don't normally see posting stuff about that. So I was like, hey, what the hell's going on? I was like, oh, okay, I'm just doing something. And then my sister had called me, Susan. She had called me. Was like, hey, did you know I just did a podcast with Heinz? I was like, yeah. I mean, I didn't know that she had done it, but I had known that you were doing it. She was like, well, he might be reaching out to you. I was like,
yeah, no, that's dope. So, man, thank you for so thank you and your sister for coming on. You're the first sibling of somebody to come on the show, which is crazy that we got this far. Episode 30, I think we're 30. Man, I don't even know what episode. I think we're 35 now or something like that. We're in the mid 30s.
Yeah.
And it took 30 something episodes to finally get a sibling of somebody on the show. So no, it's dope. I'm so thankful to all of our Spanaway people. We were kind of talking about how I ask whoever, and if anybody wants to come on, I always say this every episode, man, if anyone wants to come on, just let me know. There's no gatekeeping or anything like that, man. I am down to have anybody from this way come on the show. And, but it's funny because I get it. In the very first episode, I was talking with James and he was saying oh yeah, all these people are going to come on. And I was like, dude, I had this feeling that if I ask certain people, they're not going to want to do it. Not everybody wants to be on YouTube, hey, people will make a Facebook account or even a TikTok, and even then they might not really be in front of the camera, or it's usually just pictures and stuff. Talking in front of a camera is so different. And so that's why I try not to.
It's definitely a skill set.
It's definitely a skill set for sure. And then so I don't, man, if people because a lot of people have wanted to come on and then maybe cancel last minute, and then hey, I'm okay with that because it's I get it. It's not like you said. It's even if you don't have that skill set, maybe you don't want to just be on and just kind of talk about that. For some people, it's trauma happened back then, So some people don't want to bring up old stuff, and man, all those are all valid reasons, and so that's why for me. And I've said this before is man, the show works better. This whole dynamic works better when somebody wants to come on the show versus me begging and trying to drag somebody on the show. And if you want to be on, it just works a little bit better that way. Yeah. So yeah, man. So this is what's interesting because I usually ask people, where were you born? And then when did your family come to Spanaway?
Well, actually, I was born Fort Lewis, on the military base.
Yeah.
Then because my dad was in the military, we ended up moving after when I was 2 years old to Alabama. Lived there for 3 years. Then moved to Germany for 3 years. Then moved back, but lived in Lakewood for a year. And then in fifth grade, which was probably 92-ish, is when I moved to Spanaway. And went to Natchez Trail in fifth grade.
Yeah. No, that's because Susan kind of brought that stuff up too. Do you remember any of those? You've mentioned a lot of places that you guys travel to, and like and how many siblings again did you have? Like, what was the age difference between you guys?
Two older sisters. The oldest is like 4 years older than me, and then Susan's a year older.
Okay, okay. And then yeah, man, what were some of your memories from, those like elementary days, like or like when you were moving in that during that time between Alabama, Germany, all that stuff. Do you remember any of that?
Well, Alabama is where I started to really have memories that I could recall.
Yeah.
I remember it being hot. I remember there being big thunderstorms where you could see huge clouds coming over and lightning, all that kind of stuff. I don't remember too much of it, but I do remember that it did suck having to move away because my best friend lived next door and
Yeah.
knowing that I was going to have to leave. But we were also excited because we lived on a military base and half the people there had already lived in Germany. So they were telling us how cool it was to move out there. So it was some sadness, but a lot of excitement preparing to move to Germany. And once we moved to Germany, to be honest, that was some of my happiest memories
Oh
because
yeah?
we got to do so much cool stuff that,
Like what?
when you're a kid, you kind of take it for granted when you're a kid. I was between 5 and 7 years old when we lived out there. But I mean, driving to another country out there is like driving from here to Oregon. So
Yeah.
the countries are so small out there that you can experience so many different cultures in such a quick road trip that we would do road trips all the time. And I can't even count how many different countries I had been to.
Yeah. Have you
But,
been back at all?
I think not to Europe, no.
Okay, yeah. I was in and the last time I was in Europe it was like 2018, and just like you said, literally just driving around. Like we drove from Germany to like we went to Belgium and then we went through like Liechtenstein or something like that. Or no, Luxembourg. And that got
Hmm.
and Luxembourg's so small that like when you drive through it on the freeway, it's literally like 5 minutes and then you're already through it's crazy. Like you were saying,
Yeah.
everything's so like close like that. It reminds me of the
Yeah.
East Coast too. The East Coast is like that. All the states you can get like
Hmm.
to 5 different states in like, 2 hours, so
Hmm.
everything's close like that. So that's the one thing that it is weird, like growing up in Washington and like because we're so far away from all the other states, we only border 2 states. So it's
Yeah.
like we're either like, and I've never been to Idaho. And so I've
Yeah.
only been to Oregon, and like that's
Yeah.
the only other state that we border. So that's why it is kind of funny how you bring that up. But yeah. So yeah, sorry, you were talking about Germany again.
But yeah, so Germany, like I said, there was a lot of cool memories. Just we got to see castles, and
Oh
we
yeah.
got to go see all the different Leonardo da Vinci stuff in
Oh yeah,
Italy and Leaning Tower of Pisa, and just all kinds of stuff that at the time you take it for granted because you're a kid
for
and you don't
sure.
know any better. The one of the ones that I always tell people is like we used to go to Oktoberfest every year. And I didn't realize it was the fest.
Yeah.
To me, it was just a place that we would go eat some good food. My dad would drink some beer, and some guys would be dancing and leader hosing on the stage. But I didn't know any different. And then, all of a sudden, when I'm back in the States and I'm 21, and people are like, "Hey, man, Oktoberfest," and I was like, man, that rings a bell for some reason. And
Yeah.
then I had to like think deep. And I was like, oh shit, I actually got to go to like the OG Oktoberfest, like the real deal in
Yeah.
Germany. I was like, okay, okay.
That's dope. That is dope. That's so funny. Cause and this I think your sister brought it up, like she went back just for that. That was like a reason
Oh,
why.
did you?
I think so. I think she brought up
Yeah.
like the reason why she's only been back. I think she said she only been back once, and then like the reason was literally for that, for
Mm.
Oktoberfest, and I was like, dang.
Yeah.
I've been to Munich. I haven't been during Oktoberfest, so that's still like on my bucket list as like things to do. Because no, man, I've seen it's different. It's so weird. It's different.
Yeah.
How would you explain Germany to people like that maybe have never been to Europe or just Europe in general?
I mean, I don't even know how to explain it because, like I said, I was still so young.
Yeah, true. Yeah, yeah. Actually, explain Europe in the 80s slash 90s. Basically, because that's
Well,
basically what
the
you.
thing I do remember is that, like, so, my dad's black, my mom's Korean. And, a lot of times, like, if my dad was working, my mom would take us somewhere and we'd leave the base and we'd go somewhere, like, in, like, real deal Germany. And
Oh yeah,
you would see, like, the older Germans kind of, like, pause and, like, stare at us. Like, we got a Korean mom walking three little half black kids,
Yeah.
around. Kind of like, I don't know what they were thinking, but I know something was going on in their mind.
Yeah. No, for sure. For sure. For sure. Do you speak I mean, yeah, do you speak any other languages? Do you speak Germany or
Back when I lived there, yes, it was
that's dope.
required that we took German, so I could speak it back then, but very minimal.
Yeah.
Just like the basic words. I could get around, but I've lost all that.
And how about
And then
your
I did used to speak.
how
I used
about
to speak Korean when I was younger,
okay, yeah, I was just about to ask that.
but yeah, I lost that as well. I can understand like the basic things, like if my mom's yelling at me to hurry up and get ready for school or something. I know what she means, but yeah, I can't really speak it.
Yeah, man, I think there's something about those like when you're a kid, you can just pick up languages better too. So like the
Yeah.
way your brain can kind of function like even some of my cousins' kids that live out here, like cuz most of the kids learn English in the school, but one of the kids
Mhm.
hasn't even gone to school yet, and she probably has the best well, not the best, but like almost better English than her older brothers and sisters because she watches so much YouTube. So like she knows all the like
Yeah.
random YouTube words that like, and it's just
Yeah.
like, dude, that's so crazy. But I think there's something about like, when you're young at that age, you can just pick up languages better because
Yeah.
it's harder when you get older. So have you ever
Yeah.
thought of, yeah, because look, I'm out here and like people are like, man, your Samoan must be good, and I was just like, not really, because I don't really have that desire. Do you want to try to learn Korean at all?
I mean, I would like to preserve it. I just don't know if I have the brain power right now with the
See, I'm right
workload that
with
I
you.
have.
Yeah. See,
Maybe when my daughters are moved out and I have a lot more free time, maybe I'll dedicate some brain power to that.
yeah. No, that's nah, man. That's why it's so fun. Like just thinking about that. So, and then so you were fifth grade. Which? Oh yeah. What elementary school were? Do you have like elementary school memories?
Yeah. So fifth grade went to Natchez Trail. I had Mrs. Garwood as my fifth grade teacher, so that was a good experience.
That's dope. That's dope. Yeah, because I feel like Natchez Trail is the one that has the most. I feel like you guys have dominated the podcast as far as people that have been on here. I feel like the represented
Oh, really?
elementary school happened. Yeah, I think so. I think the most. Yeah, you guys are just representing. So hold up one sec. Oh, hold up, real quick. My bad. Okay. My
No
bad. Where
worries.
were we?
Are we talking about Natchez Trail?
Oh yeah. I think actually I want to go back and like count and see which. I just feel like you guys represent the most so far on here. I want to say, man, there's at least, man. Now I'm just guessing, but I feel like a third of you guys might be from Natchez Trail. So just as far as like people
I mean, there
representing,
was something in
so
the water, so
for sure, for sure. Yeah. Do you remember teachers from back then, or yeah, like what?
Yeah, I remember Miss Garwood. She was a pretty cool teacher. I would say Mr. Freilich was my sixth grade teacher. He stands out the most. He was kind of like the cool teacher that everybody wanted.
Dope.
What everybody liked about him is like, you get the two recesses, you get your lunch recess and then your mid-afternoon recess. But then if we were extraordinarily good that day, he would let us get like a little 5 or 10 minute recess right before school got out. And our class and Mr. Gunnarson's class would let out for that little 5-10 minutes, and some of us would play basketball together or whatever. He would let us just run around. But
That's dope.
we had to behave though.
For sure, for sure. Nah, man, that's good. That's good. Were you involved in were you doing extracurriculars at that age too, like in elementary?
Yeah, so I was in band. I played the trumpet in sixth grade, and then I also was in sports. I played football. No, not football. I played basketball and baseball.
Nice. Nice. And then you went on to Spanaway. What was your junior high?
Spanaway Junior.
Spanaway
Yep.
Junior. Yep.
Yep.
Yeah, do you have any memories from your Spanaway Junior days?
Yeah, I think with most people entering into middle school, junior high years, those are like the awkward years where
Hella.
you don't really know who you are. You're trying to figure yourself out. Me, I had been there for 2 years at the time, but I still didn't feel like I quite belonged. And also being biracial, I remember this is when I remember I had some friends that were of different races, like in fifth and sixth grade. But then when middle school, junior high came around, all of a sudden everybody kind of started segregating. Like people that I used to hang out with, they might have been Pacific
Really?
Islander or something else. All of a sudden they're hanging out with only Pacific Islanders, and weren't necessarily hanging out with me as much, or not just those, but like other kids over here. And then I remember I was
Yeah.
just sitting in the lunchroom, and I didn't know where to go because I'm half black and half Korean, right? And so like I hang out with the black kids. They say I'm too light. They say I'm not black enough. But then I go try to hang with the Asian. They say I'm too black. And so it's like I didn't know where to fit in. So I just, luckily I feel like sports saved me in that aspect, because at least I was, halfway decent at sports. So I kind of fit in with that group. But that's
I
probably
think
what sticks out the most in my mind as far as junior high.
that's funny that you say that, because I think by the time you get to high school, like there's so many of you, like of that mix, like you guys could have had your own, like, I just feel like there's so many of you guys that were, like there was just, to me now looking back, I mean, that what's funny is like, if you break down the numbers, it might not be that big, but it's just like, I don't know, it just feels like in my memory, and when I look back, it's just how many people were. But I think I've said this before, just in general, like we just had a lot of it, and like a lot of times I didn't realize people were, but we just had there was a lot of Koreans that we went to school with, whether you were mixed black
Yeah.
or mixed white or full Korean or whatnot. It's just like, man, there
Yeah.
was a lot of us. So nah, man, that's interesting. And then so then did you play sports what sports did you play when you were at Spanaway Junior?
At Spanaway Junior, I played basketball all 3 years. I couldn't play football because around that time I developed Osgood-Schlatter, which is it's basically like a growth spurt disease in your knees where they get swollen.
No way.
So yeah, so I wasn't able to play football, but it kind of started to go away towards basketball season. So I played basketball, and then I played football 8th and 9th grade.
Oh, so this was only you just didn't play 7th grade, is what you're saying. I see.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But I picked it up in 8th and 9th grade.
Okay, dope. And then you didn't play any like spring sports?
Oh, well, I did. I tried to do track. Coach Pendon was my 7th grade basketball coach, and he knew that I could jump, and so he tried to get me to do high jump, and then they tried to get me to run the 200 and stuff like that. And they also had me do shot put. So I stayed with shot put because he didn't have to run a lot. And then the first day of practice, just for conditioning, he wanted everybody to run a 400.
Oh,
and
yeah.
I literally stopped. I stopped halfway through. I was like, fuck this. Sorry, am I allowed to cuss on here?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. Halfway through, I was like, fuck this. I'm going back to the shot put.
Yeah.
We don't have to run over there.
That's
So I did shot put, I think, for a year or two, but then track was kind of boring to me, so I kind of let that go.
Yeah.
And just stuck with football and basketball. And I was not good at baseball at all.
Yep.
I never really
Nah, man, that's dope. And then so were you in band still in junior high?
Yeah, I played trumpet through
All the way through?
all throughout junior high. Yeah.
Okay, dope.
Yeah.
And then any other like extracurriculars in junior high that you?
No, I mainly like to focus on sports and music. That's pretty much all I did.
Yeah. No, that's dope. And now, so I mean, like we were just saying, like, your sister's been on the show, and like what was that like? Going to school, having somebody, like having your sibling, like in the grade right above you. What was that like for you?
There was some pros and some cons. I think the pro was that I had somebody that had already been there, so she already kind of
put you on game,
able to kind of lead the way.
Yeah,
kind of let me know what to expect. But also, that sibling rivalry type of thing where she did not want me hanging around with her. She did not want me talking to her friends or anything like that. So by that time, I had already established that I'll just keep my distance and kind of stay over there.
For sure. And so,
there were times that we did have to hang out because we were both in band, and so like we'd have to like go to like the Daffodil Parade and things like that. And so
obviously, yeah,
we were able to get along during those times.
Yeah, I mean, do you have any like random stories from like elementary or junior high from that you remember that maybe stick out to you? That's just like could be like a random thing, and like I feel like a lot of times people like I feel like they hold back like stories and like they think that it might be boring, but I think like nah, man. I think that, like you may think is boring to you because maybe you lived through it and it was maybe like a mundane event. Ah, man, I just love and like obviously too, right? People, we're talking about 30 plus year old memories, man. So of course, some of these are going to be wrong. It's like, this is not like, like watching something recorded. So obviously if the memory's wrong, it's all good too, but it's also
It's not like
curious.
anybody's gonna fact check.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Yeah. So do you have any from back then that maybe stick out to you?
Yeah, this is a memory that I like to tell my kids every now and then. It's just more amusing to me. So I was always a late bloomer, and part of it was that I was always the youngest in my grade. So I graduated at 17, and it just had to do with that because my birthday was in August. So my parents had to make a
Yeah.
decision: do we send him early or have him go late? And so I was always the young guy. And with that being said, I was always a little bit more immature than everybody else in my grade, a little late to the party. And I remember specifically in ninth grade, I had a quote unquote girlfriend who will remain anonymous, but I had a girlfriend in ninth grade, and we'd only been dating for maybe like a week. But there was a ninth grade dance, and I was scared of girls at the time. I didn't even know how to interact with girls at that time. And instead of going to the ninth grade dance, I was sitting at home watching cartoons and Gargoyles to be specific.
Oh, snap. Yeah. I used to
And
watch that. I was not in
I
ninth
remember,
grade, but I used to watch Gargoyles.
yeah. And I remember getting a call from Daryl Blanchard for sure. It was Daryl Blanchard. He called me and was like, "Boy, if you don't get your ass over to this dance, your girlfriend's here right now." And so I ended up getting dressed and going, but I was also awkward, so I didn't have a good time. But that was kind of a defining moment for me where I realized that I was not at the maturity level of everybody else in my grade because here I am in ninth grade still watching Gargoyles while everybody else
No
is at the dance trying to
way.
get their freak on.
Wild. I didn't realize you were, I mean, because my birthday's in June, and so same thing with me. I graduated. I was 17 when I graduated too. So like,
Mm.
because my birthday was right after graduation, but like I didn't realize yours was in August. Oh man, did you just have your birthday?
Yeah, it was a couple days ago.
Okay. Oh yeah, snap. Happy birthday. No, that's
Yeah, thank you.
dope.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, that's yeah. Okay, so now we're in high school now, and yeah, like tell me about like what type of same things I asked about kind of with junior high, like what was some of your favorite teachers, classes maybe that you had um, when you were at in high school.
Yeah, high school, I think for everybody is still like a learning experience. You're trying to figure out who you are. 10th grade, I didn't really know who I was or who I was supposed to hang out with. Some of the guys that were my friends in junior high were no longer my friends. They were hanging out with other people that I didn't really agree with their lifestyle choices. So I started going in other directions, and I was more focused on sports. I was at that point I was a full on jock, meathead, whatever. So I spent a lot of, and I had given up band at that point. So I was just all in on
Oh,
sports, taking rollbacks weightlifting class every semester or whatever,
yep,
just lifting weights and taking creatine and protein drinks before anybody else was.
yep.
But yeah, one of my core memories was I won't say the teacher's name, but there was an English teacher that did not like me in 10th grade, and uh, anybody that was in my class when it was me and Paul Watley together know that we made a lot of noise banging on the desk. We would use our pencils in our hands and we would make drums on
Beats,
the desk.
yeah.
Yeah, we would make beats. And I remember this specific teacher told me that I was never going to amount to nothing because all I do is make noise. And so
Which is so
I'm glad
crazy
I
too.
didn't
Which
listen to her.
Yeah, but I will have to say, like the way the desks were set up, like it was like set up perfectly. And if you had a pencil, because I used to make beats on the desks too all the time, and I was never a drummer or anything, but just the ergonomic angles of everything is just like perfect to make beats,
Yeah,
and like the way it's just such a natural thing, you know what I mean? And like I was never
yeah,
that good, and it's not like I did it hella either. Maybe I probably didn't do it as much as maybe you guys, but man, I used to make beats on that thing on desks all the time. And so, especially if you had the right
yeah,
pencil, if you had the right pencil and like the desk was like
yeah,
at the right level, it's just like, dude, so it's
yeah,
ergonomically, it just works out. So that's why it's
yeah,
hilarious that somebody said that to you too. Like that's
yeah.
funny. That's funny. Dang. So then that's funny that so you were making beats back then. Then like what was the reason you were like you kind of stopped doing band?
Well, so I was in jazz band in junior high, and that was kind of like the highest level that you can get to in junior high.
Yep.
And then when it was time to go to high school, was the band teachers, was it Graciano? Was that the
Yep.
band teacher? I think his name
Yep.
was. But he was trying to scout me and a couple other people, and I had to make a decision if I wanted to play sports or be in band, because the level of band that he wanted me to be in was also an after school program.
Yeah.
And, at this point, I'm starting to get into girls in 10th grade. It's like, okay, do I want to play football or be in band? Which one,
Yeah.
And
No,
so
that makes
I
sense.
chose sports. And so I put band on the back burner.
Nah, man, that makes sense. I had to kind of do the same thing too. Like, because I tried to be in music company the whole time I was in high school. I only made it my senior year. And then because of football season, though, I was like, I can't be in music company basically for the whole first part of the year, but then,
Yeah.
right when football season was done, it was like, yo, I'm back. But no, I get that exactly. Especially like if you come in and you're a sophomore and like, man, you have to decide. Yeah. I mean, if I
Yeah.
had to decide, I would have picked football every time against all
Yeah.
the other
Yeah.
activities I did. So it was just kind of, it was pretty fun. Now, do you have, yeah, man, what kind of, do you have any like football memories
Oh, man,
from
that's
back
probably where
then
most of
too,
my
since we're
memories
kind of
come
talking
in.
about? Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a bulk of my memories, as long as they're not faded out by the concussions that I received
Oh
during
man,
that
I
time.
feel that.
But yeah, I mean,
I
football was
feel
probably
that.
my favorite time of high school. I remember going into 10th grade, being a sophomore, and going. I remember our very first practice in pads, and when you're in 10th grade, 10th grade boys and senior boys, there's a big difference,
I'll
right?
tell you,
And
I told this
I'm
story
used to being the
already
big guy.
for sure.
Oh yeah,
You were bigger than
but yeah,
me,
so I'm used to being
when you were bigger
yeah,
than me when
but
we were,
but but we're not in tune with our body. We don't know how to
for
use our
sure.
body in 10th
Yeah.
grade. You know what I'm
You're
saying? So
like
like
raw.
I remember in ninth grade, I'm a big kid, and then I get to 10th grade, and all of a sudden you see the seniors, and they're full of testosterone, and they're ready to go. And I remember I was gonna play linebacker, right? So I'm in the linebacker group, and this is first day of pads. We had just had the 3 days of no pads, and then we get the first day of pads, and it's a hitting drill. And I remember fucking Robert Airchard knocked the shit out of me. And I had never been hit that hard in my life. It gave me such a big headache, and I was like, "Oh man, do I even want to play football for real? Like, this is what it feels like." So that
Yeah.
was like my introduction into high school football.
Oh, man. Robert blessed you. Robert blessed you like that. I got blessed the same way too. Like my same thing, literally the first day of pads, my sophomore year, same thing, 3 days. And then it was like, we did like these hitting drills. And then I've never been snot bubbled the whole time I played football, except for that one practice, the first day of pads,
Yeah,
my sophomore year, I got snot bubbled. So like where, I was running the ball in a drill. It wasn't even during like scrimmage. It was in a drill and I got
yeah,
drilled. And then that was the first time I was like, dude, what the hell? And then like I had snot all over and I was just like,
yeah,
dude, that's crazy. Say, and I think everybody thinks it's funny. I thought about quitting football every day, but it wasn't even the hitting. It was literally the running. It was like, dude, this
yeah,
sucks. And
yeah,
like, why are you out here? Just quit this team, like it's so funny. And then by the end, it's done. And then, we get to like hang out and just us
yeah,
being boys as a team and brotherhood and like
yeah.
all that fun stuff comes. And then you're just like, oh, I ain't quitting. Like I can handle it. And so, yeah. Yeah, man. Do you have games that stick out too? So like, man, obviously that's tight. It's so funny. Like when people remember a practice, but that practice is
Yeah,
like easy to quantify because it was the first day of
yeah,
pads your sophomore year.
yeah.
I have a very similar story. First day of pads my sophomore year. Any special games that stick out to you from back then?
Oh, man.
Or maybe even other moments too, So
Yeah, I mean, I would, I would think obviously for me, senior year would be the most memorable, because that's where,
yeah, you guys were
you know,
good.
starter, I'm a captain, all that stuff. I would say, even though we lost that game, the Bethel game stands out to me the most, um,
Oh,
for obvious reasons, But that was a game where like I left it all on the field, and we still lost. And
Yeah.
there was nothing I could do to remedy the issues that were happening during the game. As
Now
much as
that
I
was the
tried, it
playoff game
wasn't.
you're talking about, right? Not the regular
No,
season.
this was
Oh, this was the regular
no.
season.
Yeah, this was like this is when we were still undefeated, I think.
Oh, snap.
Yeah, I can't remember, but this was going to choose whether we were going to have home field advantage. I think is what it was.
Okay,
And
okay.
so, or no, was that the Curtis? I don't know. I can't remember. But it was the big game, right? Because I think both us and Bethel were undefeated at the time. So this is my first time. Like, you know, the stadium was sold out.
Yeah.
You know, people, there were like so
I
many
think I
people
was
there.
there.
They were standing around the edge.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
know, like all around the field. And I just remember, you know, playing my heart out, like just my body felt like it wanted to give up because I was playing both ways. I was playing tight end and defensive end, and I had
starting both
but
ways.
Just, you know, that game, like yeah, but like I just remember like, you know, sometimes they talk about flow state and like they talk about that you're just like in the zone. Like I was able to like almost like I could read the play before it happened, so I knew what was going to happen, and it was to the point where like I'd be in the camera like, hey man, they're gonna run right there. They're going to run right there. I could tell by this guy right here. And I would tell the middle linebacker and the D tackle, they're coming right towards you. And then they would run right there. And so that's like, that was probably like my peak flow state as far as football is concerned, was that Bethel game.
That's dope. That's dope. Yeah, man. It's you. I feel like now that as you get older, you try to find that flow state in everything, like, you know, whatever your profession may be, or like just whatever that you do. Like if you're in the creative, or even maybe you like play chess or video games. But man, that like being in that flow state is just like, I think that's such a nice feeling, you know. So
yeah.
Man. Yeah. Do you ever, you know, like out of all the, you know, like people that we kind of bring up, you know, and this is obviously a Spanaway podcast, like how, like, do you still keep in contact with Spanaway people? Like,
I wouldn't say a lot, but
yeah.
There's a few of us, like, you know, I talk to Paul Wally periodically. And then there's, Don Batten, Ray Parker, the Coonty twins. I see Roster every now and then. And so I was actually playing Warzone with David Coonty and Q the other day.
So,
you know, we keep in contact.
Yeah. Like half of those guys, I swear I run into in, I'll run into them in like Seattle somewhere, super random, like, well, within the last, I'd say like 15 years, you know, so.
Yeah.
And then, nah, that's dope. Yeah, because I'm always kind of curious about like, yeah, you know, as you get older, right, people get busy, like, and then you were also bringing up, you have daughters now too, like, what's that like?
Yep,
being
2 daughters, 15 and 10.
Wow.
Oh man, it's
nice.
It's the biggest blessing, you know. I, especially for a guy like me, I was kind of a wild child growing up, so I feel like having daughters set me straight in a good way.
Yeah,
it forced me to grow up and become more mature, settle down, and become more focused, and not just think about my life, but I have to think about how my actions have consequences for their future as well. Especially as far as, you know, how they're going to turn out as adults and what kind of example am I setting for them. So they are, you know, one of the many reasons why I left the music industry, is because I didn't want them to think that the things that I was associated with was okay.
Yeah, that's so dope. I think, and I don't know if I've brought it up before, but I feel like sometimes when people have kids, you don't understand how much of like a force multiplier they can be in your, like, you know, in whatever you're doing in your life or whatever. So it sounds like that's kind of what they did to you, you know, and because people will also look at like kids as holding you back from doing stuff. But I think now, like, as you get older, you kind of get a picture, and like, it's like, no, actually, it's like the other way around. It's like, because you have this responsibility and all that stuff, that it's just like you could put you into a different gear.
Yeah.
So it's
I agree. I mean, and I'm gonna butcher it, but there's an old I think it's a Muslim cultural saying where if you want to get rich, have more kids.
Oh wow!
I've heard it somewhere on a podcast, but I'm butchering it. I know for sure I'm butchering it, but I agree. I feel like having kids is a force multiplier, because, you know, I tell young guys all the time, like, who are scared to have kids, I'm like, nah, what you don't understand is when you have kids, like, you automatically filter out all the bullshit. You cut all the fat. Like
Yeah.
you stop, especially, when I was in the music industry, there's a lot of fluff, there's a lot of bullshit meetings you got to go to. And as soon as I had kids, all those bullshit meetings stopped. I got straight to the point of, I'm like, hey, what are we meeting for? Do we need to meet? Okay. Why are we meeting? And I would get to
Yeah.
that on the phone instead of going to have, driving to Seattle, sitting down, having lunch just to find out that it's bullshit and they just wanted some money or something, or a connection or something. And so what I always tell like the
Yeah.
young guys is like, hey man, like having kids, like it forces you to you know, get down to the nitty gritty as far as what actually matters in your life, and you value your time so much more. Because like what started happening to me is like I'd be out at events or whatever, and I'd be doing this and that, which I needed to do for my work. But then I'd be sitting like, man, I could be with my daughters right now. I don't need to be here. I'm going home.
Yeah. No, that's dope. No, for sure. That's why it's like, I think, yeah, it's funny. I've never heard people really, or maybe people were saying it when we were younger, but I never really noticed it. But it's like now as you get older, you could kind of, I don't know. I just feel like it's, for most people, it's just like nothing but good. You know what I mean? So, no, man, that's so dope. You mentioned, man, you mentioned about being in the music industry. What you call it? So, man, what was that like? Because I've seen some of your, like, obviously some of your posts, and like I still don't even understand like what exactly what you were doing. Can you give folks maybe like some background? Because that's so interesting. That's why I was like laughing that you got out of band during our high school years, and then because I didn't know you did that, you were musically inclined like that. Because when I met you, kind of like you were saying, like I knew you were kind of like a jock, so that's why I was like, like dang, so when I saw it, it was just like, that's dope. But to me, it was kind of out of left field. How did you get into that? And yeah, just kind of talk about your journey with all that, with being in the music
Yeah,
industry.
yes, like you said, I had quit band, but I had also played the piano when I was in sixth grade, but I didn't play
No.
for school. I just because my sisters played the piano, so I wanted to copy them. So
How
I took
old?
a
How
couple
old
years of
were you?
lessons. I
Like,
was in fifth and sixth grade, so like 10 or
dope. Oh
11.
my gosh.
So I took a couple years of lessons, but then quit that as well. So I always had music in the background.
Yeah.
But then, so after high school, I went down to a community college in California to play football. I went to a JUCO to try to get a full ride to a
Yeah.
4 year after that.
Dope. Where'd you go?
And I remember College of the Redwoods. It's in
Yes. Yep.
Eureka, California.
Yep. For sure.
Yeah, Joe Green and myself went down there together.
Dope.
But yeah, so I remember I was sitting in the dorms and I was walking down the hallway and I heard a beat coming from a room, but there was no lyrics on it. And so I poked my head in and I was like, hey, what are you doing? And I saw this guy just clicking on the computer. He's like, oh, I'm making a beat. I'm like, oh, for real? And I was like, can I try? And he let me mess around with it. And I was hooked ever since then.
Really?
And to the point, like, I didn't even know this kid, but I just started coming to his room and started, bullying him out of his chair and started playing with his stuff to the point where I eventually ended up buying that program for myself on a computer.
What was that program?
Oh, this was
Because man, this is 2001, right? So this would have
this
been.
is probably 2001. I think it was called Music Maker or something. It was like a $30 program. I bought it at Best Buy and was doing it on my e-machines computer. It was a very, very basic program. But that was kind of the start of it. And then I, slowly started meeting people, ended up moving back up to Washington and started meeting more people in the Seattle scene. Started showing me the ropes. And then I kind of felt like I was hitting a wall as far as like not learning a lot. I felt like I was learning too slow.
Yeah.
Because back then, this is before YouTube.
Yeah.
So
Oh yeah. Yep.
back in those days, you had to
Yeah.
you actually had to know somebody to learn the skill set.
So
And
when you say,
I was having a hard time
real quick, so
learning
when you were
the
saying
higher
like,
level.
when you were saying like learning the ropes, like before getting to those higher levels you're about to go into, like what do you mean? Like what kind of things were you learning? Like,
Well, just how to make a good song. So like I had the
Dope.
had the potential, like I had the musical ear, but I didn't have the technical
Yes.
expertise to actually make it high quality. Because especially like in the early 2000s, you would hear people that made music, but it sounded like shit, right? Like it just sounded like it was like made on on a telephone, and it just
Oh,
really
I
bad
see. Yeah.
quality. And so that was what I was running into. Is like, okay, I have the idea, it's a great idea, but then the idea was not translating on paper when it was time to play it in
Okay.
the CD player. So when it was coming through the speakers, it did not sound the way I heard it in my head. And so I was
Yes.
getting frustrated that I couldn't bring my ideas to fruition. And so, and back then, like I was saying, you had to know somebody to learn those skills. And back
Yeah.
then, it was a very tight-knit community, and they were very reluctant to give up that information because they were a specialized skill set and they got paid a lot of money to do what they do. So if they taught me, I'd become their competition. And so nobody was willing to
That
let
makes
me
sense.
into their house to show me their stuff. And so I kept hitting that wall. I was like, forget this. And so I decided to I got very lucky that at the time I was a personal trainer, and one of my clients, her dad was a director of a music production program at Shoreline Community College.
Dope.
And so she introduced me to him, and so I ended up taking two of their degree programs. One was for music production, and the other was for audio engineering. And so I took both of those, and that was the game changer for me because it introduced me to a lot of high level people that taught me all those necessary skills. Yes, 100%.
That's so dope. That's so dope.
And so from there, I once I finished that, that's when I started getting into the.
Yeah, what year was that? What year were you going up? No, all good. What year were you going all the way? Because man, I used to live right there. Well, I lived in Northgate, but I used to work at Shoreline.
Yeah, so I went to Shoreline from 06 to 09.
Okay. Yeah, damn, I was right there.
And the hard part about that was that, like, when I finished school was when the economy had tanked because of the real estate bullshit. Yep. And so
the great financial crisis
to a world of debt. So there was no opportunities. And so I had these degrees that I had taken out student loans for, and the world was dog shit at the time. So I kind of had to figure things out. And so I started interning at Robert Lang Studios. I was able to work my way into Robert Lang Studios is where a lot of the grunge rock music came out of Seattle in the 90s. So like Nirvana had recorded there, Soundgarden.
Are they a Seattle company?
Foo Fighters, Alice in Chains. Yeah, so the studio's in Richmond Beach, which is down the street from Shoreline. So it's basically Shoreline, but down on the water. So that's where the studio is at. So I started interning there. But if anybody knows what it's like to be an intern, it's a slow process because you clean a lot of toilets and make a lot of coffee and take out the trash.
Yeah.
And so what I started doing is instead of interning, I decided to pay the engineers to teach me their tricks.
Smart.
And so I basically paid them to turn me into their competition, and they had to because they needed the money. So, and then from there, I started engineering sessions. This is at a time when home studios started becoming more prevalent because of Guitar Center. And this is when YouTube started coming out. So all the YouTube tutorials started coming out. So everybody felt like they can just go to Guitar Center, spend a couple grand, get a computer, get a couple programs, and then they were all of a sudden, they had a home studio. I had a home studio.
Already.
But luckily I had some good business mentors that taught me about differentiation and looking at your competition and doing something different than what your competition is doing. So when everybody went to the home studios, which I understood, it made sense for the client because it's cheaper, whatever, blah, blah, blah. I went to the big boy studios because there's one thing that the home studios cannot do, which is attract the big clients. And so one of the things that I got to learn by being at that big studio, I spent a lot of free time, a lot of money there to learn how to operate with big budget clients. We're talking about with major record labels, with major entertainment companies. And so I got to see how these things are done. You have to sign a non-disclosure a year in advance to have HBO come through and shoot a special. But you have to do all these things, and you have to security, all that kind of stuff, managing the files. There's a reason why, a big A-list label artist is only going to go to these big studios because these are very, very important files that you have to take care of.
Security
is really important.
Processes are just on point, like facilities, no, it makes sense. Like there's a reason why, like, you can even, speaking of YouTube, you can look at somebody like even like Mr. Beast, who started from nothing. And then now he owns all these huge ass studios too. It's just like, man, that's just the way it goes. Like
Yeah.
once you get bigger and then your production gets better, you need to increase everything. So that's everything from security of files, to even security of the location, to like, nah, man, it makes sense. But it's just
Yeah.
like such a grind to get up there though, because it's hard, you know, like
Yeah.
kind of like you
It
were
is a
saying.
grind.
It's
It
and
is.
nobody really understand, like you're like the first person to kind of break down this path. I would never understand like what you basically had to go through, right? To kind of like, and it's not laid out. It's not like, become a lawyer. I feel like what makes this conversation so crazy is like so many people get to see like just you kind of explaining the behind the scenes. Like, dude, it's like mind blowing, because it's, man, who knows like how you just feel like you make some music and then people see it and then that's it, this like, nah, man, that's not how it works. You gotta like step by step.
Yeah, that's the hard part. Yeah, that's the hard part about being in the position that I was in, is that, with social media, you only see the highlight reel. And so that's all they
For
expect. They
sure.
don't know what it took to get to where I was. So, I would have people I would have people I haven't talked to in 15 years reach out to me and be like, hey, I do music now, blah, blah, blah. And it's okay, cool. That's great. I'm happy that you're doing music, but I spent a lot of money and a lot of time
Yeah.
getting to this part. And the fact that we haven't talked to each other in 15 years, I don't know you.
Yeah.
I don't know what you've been doing these last 15 years. This connection that you want from me took me a long time to build. I don't know who you are. Now, if I put you in the room with this person, are you going to embarrass me? Are you going to fuck
Yeah.
off this connection that I spent a lot of money? And they will get a little bit butthurt that I won't, do things for them, but they don't realize that my family's at
Yeah.
stake. My
1,000%.
ability to take care of my family is at stake.
1,000%.
Just because we grew up together, but I haven't talked to you since 1999, doesn't mean that I should introduce you to somebody, because I had to sacrifice my whole life to get to this point.
1,000%.
And that's the part that people don't get to see on social media, is the cleaning the toilets,
Yeah.
losing $1,000 here, losing $5,000 here,
Yeah.
because I made a mistake that I had to learn from and then had to grow from. They don't see all the things that had happened leading up to that moment. All they know is that they see me hanging out at a record label and they want me to introduce them to the record label. And then I tell them that I can't because they don't have A, B, and C in place. And then they think that I'm being the asshole, but it's like, no, anybody that's in my position will say the same thing. And the only reason why I know is because I asked them and they say the same thing. Like, no, they had to struggle to get to where they are. So in order for people to get access to that, they have to meet certain criteria, because they're not going to risk their future. They're not going to risk their profession, their well-being for somebody that they don't know. And so that was probably the hardest part that I had to deal with the position that I was in at the
For
time.
sure, for sure. What's crazy too is like, when we were just talking about social media, man, everybody puts their highlights on social media. But what's funny is like what would actually make more people relatable is if more of us, because, I'm guilty of it too. I'll put highlights on there. But if we actually put more like failures on there, and so it's such a
Yeah.
weird thing, but it's like when it comes to, for example, like when you're like, if you're watching sports, like, March Madness or whatever, man, everybody roots for the underdog, unless that's
Yeah.
your team. So it's funny because
Yeah.
it's like when we put ourselves on social media, we all want to be like the big dogs or the favorites, when it's like
Yeah.
in actuality, we really should be trying to like be the underdogs, so that's why it's kind of like, that's why I feel like, I don't know why, but it makes me think of like Shadur going in the fifth round, right? Because it's like, no, that's good that he went in the fifth round. Now he has that, like, he has that chip
Yeah.
now. If he was the first
Yeah.
overall pick, that might have been that, maybe he's not as good, but he would have hella pressure. But now as the fifth, it's like,
Yeah.
so that's what I'm saying. And that's why I feel like so many of us, myself included, like, man, sometimes you got to embrace the cleaning the toilets and the losing the 1,000, the 5,000, like those are all like, that helps build you up, so, and like it happens a lot of times. And
Yeah.
I just feel like it's one of those good things that, and it's just a blessing. So, So yeah, man, no, that makes sense now. Like too, like, your connections, man, you build, those are like solid, and you don't want to mess those up just because,
Yeah,
somebody, that you have no idea like what their mental state can be,
yeah,
like you haven't taught, so nah, man, that makes sense. You definitely got to protect your own. So that's why it's just like, man, so yeah, man. So now you're like, how did you have the foresight to know, like, because you were talking about home studios versus, getting time in the big studios. How did you know that that's what you needed to, and I think you said it already, right? Because you wanted to attract the A-list stars, but I feel like, how did you just know that that was the point, especially when maybe you didn't have the resources yet to, like, rent out or just learn those skills to be in like the bigger studios and stuff.
well, I feel like sometimes God puts people in your life at the right time if you're prepared to receive it. And I was very fortunate when I was a personal trainer. I ended up getting a client who was an older guy, and he was just super depressed. His wife had just left him, took half of his money, and left him for his best friend. And I didn't know this at the time, but he was just a client of mine, right? And so I'm just doing my thing. I'm 21 years old. I'm just training him, getting him in shape. He had just moved here. He doesn't know anybody in the state, so I'm setting him up with dates from other old ladies at the gym.
Look at you.
I'm doing that thing, right? And I'm just trying to sell him a more personal training. That's all I was doing, right?
Yeah,
And
you're just doing your
and
job.
then yeah, I'm just doing my job, and I got him in shape, got it built up his confidence, and we became good friends. And long story short, come to find out, he was a director of one of the biggest banks in Chicago. He facilitated multi-billion-dollar deals for pharmaceutical companies. He was a business consultant. He had done a bunch of major shit all throughout the country.
Dope.
He was a boss. And he took me under his wing for about a year and showed me a bunch of stuff and taught me a bunch of business stuff and taught me how to think ahead of the curve.
Wow.
And so he mentored me, and yeah, he was life changing. And I, whenever people ask me, I always go back to him, and I always say that he was probably the biggest change in my life as far as my trajectory. Because before him, I was kind of a dumbass. I was just thinking I was going to make it off of pure talent, but he kind of set me straight. And because he's a numbers guy, a spreadsheet guy, he was like, look, just whatever you're doing doesn't make sense. Like, you got to fucking, it has to fit in this thing, and if you can focus on that, then everything else will fall into place. And so he was how I was able to attract investors and all kinds of things, because I learned how to approach investors through him.
What year was this? How old were you?
Let's see, this was probably 6 to '07.
That's so dope, man. Yeah.
Yeah,
To
so I
have
was,
somebody come in
mid
your
20s.
life and then, like,
Yeah.
I
Well,
think,
he's the reason why I decided to go to school. So at that time, so I had the other client whose dad was a director, but I was talking to him. I was like, should I go to school? He's like, hell yeah, you should go to school if you really want to do this. So he's the one that convinced me to stop being a personal trainer and go to school.
but that's so funny, because I was just going to give a shout out to you being a personal trainer. Because if you think about it, that personal trainer job it unlocked two crazy
Yeah.
things for your
Yeah.
music career. So
Yeah.
that's why it's like, this episode hasn't come out yet, but I talk about how sometimes, I love when people make great decisions in their life, because, I look back and maybe I haven't made some of the best, but then there's other people that just made like perfect, types of decisions. And like, what's funny is like you talking about your story, just like when you bring up personal training, it's like, it's so crazy because it feels like it's something that might be kind of small, but if you look at the golden nuggets of the people that you got to meet, and then how it influenced like your path, especially in the industry that has nothing to do with personal training, that's
Yep.
what makes it
Yep.
crazy. But just you
Yep.
being who you are, just being the person that you were that these people felt, they wanted to help you, they're paying you already, but now they're like, no, you know what, we want to do this thing for you. And nah, man, I think that's just another great lesson for people to, what I'm trying to say is, like, sometimes when we have goals, like, it's just good to get in action, get in motion, just do something, even though it's not
Yep.
the you're not focused on the thing. Like, and so this is why it comes back to your story of like somebody trying to get the shortcut and like be, have you be the connect. Like, bro, it's like you didn't go and be a personal trainer and then have to meet this dude to meet that dude to get this class to become a student and then have the economy suck when I wasn't a student, or like it makes sense. So that's why it's like, no man, you can let people be butthurt because like that's the path, and like everybody has their own path. And what's funny is like even if you were to help some people make a connect, that might actually hurt them long run, that might and then I
Yep.
quake that and I go back to the Shadur thing. It's like, man, I feel like if Shadur was picked first or even second overall, third overall, I don't know. Like, I think that might have, I mean, he still probably would have been good, but I think, man, being the underdog strengthened that. I think there's a Art of War quote,
Mm-hmm.
and since we're like misquoting, like so many things on this episode, but I think there's a thing in there where it's like, when you're weak, you want to be strong, appear strong, and then when you're strong, you want to appear weak, So it's just like there's all these like little things kind of going on, and so, nah, man, that's so dope. So now you're kind of like set up and like, man, so what's that like being in the in the industry, and like, continue on with, like how about you being in the industry.
Yeah, I mean, it was kind of bittersweet for me because it was something that I had wanted my whole life. Or my adult life. I had been working so hard for
For
it,
sure.
and I had sacrificed so much for it. But anybody that was around me during the time of my heyday, like the peak of my career, they would know that I wasn't enjoying myself.
Whoa.
Yeah, people, it looks good on social media, but like,
For sure.
it also depends on your personality, right? So like the person I was when I was 21 years old and I was single with no kids,
So
I
different.
wanted to be a rock star.
So
I
different.
wanted to be on tour. I wanted to be hanging out with all the artists. I wanted all of that life, right? But then, fast forward 15 years and I'm damn near 40 and I'm hanging in the studio at 2 a.m. Everybody's drunk and high and I'm sober because I don't like doing that shit.
Yeah.
And I want to go home because I'm tired.
Yep. No, it makes sense.
And it's like, it got to a point where like this is cool, but like I just wasn't having fun anymore.
Wow.
And it got to a point where I remember there was a specific moment, and there's two guys that were standing next to me. We were in the studio with a A-list artist. There was like 50, 60 people there. He had a whole entourage.
Damn.
Everybody was partying, and people would have killed to be in the position I was in.
Yeah.
But I wanted to go home.
Yeah, no, man.
I was done. And that was the moment when I knew
This
that I
ain't
didn't want to
right.
do this job anymore.
This ain't right.
And it might work for other people, but it just wasn't for me.
For sure.
I mean, it wasn't serving purpose in my life because I had done it so much. I had been in so many big sessions with artists. I'd been around the partying so much that it wasn't appealing to me anymore. I didn't want to be around that. And so it was kind of bittersweet because, when you have 2 degrees in music production and engineering, those degrees don't really transfer very well into other career paths.
For sure.
So I was kind of stuck. And so there was about a 3-year period where I wanted to get out, but I couldn't. And so I was trying to find ways to get out. And so I was working on some other things that fell apart.
Real quick, just to like, this podcast is so interesting because like, when you first came on and we were talking about your school days back in Spanaway and some of your times over there, you're like, hey, yeah, I was like the real immature one. I was the young one, I was so young. And then it's so funny. You get into your dream job and then like, it was such a grind to get there that now you're there and you're like, damn, I'm the old dude now. That's so crazy how it's like you went from being the young, immature dude to like so fast. Like it was like a snap of your fingers, and like all of a sudden it's like I'm not that dude no more, and I just want to go home. And like I think for all of us, like we're all, most of us that are watching that are our age, that all grew up with you and me and like some of the other people that have come on here. Like, man, like a lot of us are like right there with you, like I would rather be at home like 9 out of the 10 times when I'm out now, and I love to go out, trust me. So it's so funny because it's like people are having the time of their life around you and you're just like, man, I just want to go home. So no.
Probably another defining moment that let me know that I was old was I was in the studio, and the label had called the studio saying, "Hey, we want to get this new artist. He's 16 years old. We just signed him. Want to work on his album." I'm like, okay. And because he was 16, I knew that I was way too old to be working this kid, so I brought my assistant in to work with him.
Yeah,
He was probably like in his mid-20s at the time, but I just kind of hung out just to make sure everything went
for
smooth.
sure.
Because part of my job as a producer engineer is you're more like a project manager. You kind of just
Okay.
make sure things go over smoothly, and so I just made sure the session went well. But basically, I'm in the studio, and there's this artist who's 16. His brother's probably 15. They had a couple of their 15-year-old buddies and like a couple of 15-year-old girls, and I just remember feeling so uncomfortable that I left the studio, had to go sit in the lounge, and I'm just hanging out in the lounge, just scrolling on social media, where just doing my own thing. And the artist brother comes up to me, and they're hanging out, and he's just talking. He was like, "Hey man, can I ask you a question?" I'm like, "What?" He's like, "How does it feel to be the old guy in a room full of kids?" I was like,
No way.
I looked at him,
No
I
way.
was like, I couldn't believe he said that.
What a
shit
question.
To me.
Damn.
I was like, this kid got some balls,
For
man.
real.
I was like, oh man, it's time for me to exit stage left, man.
Wow. The audacity of these kids these days. Jesus. How does it feel? God, how does it feel to get
Yeah,
slapped upon the side of your head? So
yeah,
it's like, damn,
yeah,
that's cold. And damn.
yeah.
So like, I like what I love about this podcast too. This is like, man, this is just another way that we can celebrate people from Spanaway, and like, hey, basically for at least on this episode, or at least on this show, on this podcast, everybody gets to be the main character for your episode. And so like, man, can you just give us some of the highlights that you're willing to share that you had like during your, like some of those things that you're talking about that you've already obviously posted maybe on social media, like what types of like things, like accomplishments that you've had? I feel like, man, this is a good time to just like, like give you your flowers. This is a good place for, if you're from, I was talking to somebody, and I'll tell you after, like somebody from that we played football with, who I'm trying to get on, who I've tried to get on, but like I said, if you don't want to come on, it's all good. And like part of it was like, man, I want to give you your flowers and come on the show. And then like this person was like, well, what if I don't want to get your flowers or whatever? What if I don't want flowers? Like, then that's all good too. You don't have to come on the show. So like, but
Yeah.
I think for everybody, like, man, this is like a good time to like, I feel like society tells us we need to be humble all the time, which, that might be right.
Mhm.
But I also feel like, man, we should also celebrate some of the wins that we've had, especially in our lives, that just things need to be celebrated, And so I feel like, man,
Yeah.
Chris, go ahead, man. Just tell us some of the things that like you've accomplished that you should be proud of.
Well, probably my biggest accomplishment is right back here on the wall. It was something that I had always dreamed of getting, and that is a platinum plaque for working on Lil Baby's first album. And so I was
Oh,
very fortunate to work on a song with him when he came to Seattle in 2018. And so that was probably the pinnacle of my career, because I had worked so hard to, achieve some sort of validation, because I had people telling me my whole music career, like, hey man, you're so talented, you're going to do great things. But I hit a lot of roadblocks. I stumbled a lot. I had made a lot of mistakes, and I didn't really have anything to show for all the effort I was putting in. So once I finally got on that Lil Baby album and got that plaque, I was like, I finally have the validation, at least to prove to myself that I wasn't just following some crazy dream that was never going to come true.
for sure.
And, kind of going back to the story of the teacher that kicked me out of class for banging on the desk and telling me I was going to become nothing. If I would have listened to her, I would have never even gotten close to getting
Let's
this thing.
go.
So I always tell people, don't listen to people that tell you not to follow your dreams. So that's
Yeah, I
probably the
mean,
biggest
or
highlight.
don't listen to people that haven't accomplished things that you want to accomplish either, too. Because it's like, I think it's different.
Yeah,
Like if like a studio head told you at that age, not to do music or, whatever, it's like, okay, that's different because like they
yeah,
kind of know. But like, yeah, man, I feel like that happens all the time where you have like these random people that maybe in your life, and they probably mean good for you. Like they want what's best for you or what they think is best for you. So it could be
yeah,
somebody so close to you, your brother, your
yeah,
sister, your parents, like
yeah.
just telling you,
I imagine having an Asian mom trying to become a music producer.
ooh, yes. Yes. I'm
she
sure she was not thrilled.
she hated every minute. Yeah,
Sure
she
she
hated
was
every minute
not
of
thrilled.
it.
She was not bragging
Not
to
at
her
all.
friends at church about you. So no, for sure. It's like, yeah.
Nope.
So yeah, it's but then unless that's what's so funny, unless you blow up, then it's just kind of like, okay. So no, man, that's good. You said like, now that I've kind of brought it up, like you said you've had like roadblocks along the way, man. What kind of roadblocks like did you kind of run into? Like were there times where you're like super close or like I'm just kind of curious now because it's like,
Yeah. There were times where I was really close. At one point, I was
God,
working
those got to be the
on
worst.
taking. Yeah, so I want to try to protect people's
For sure, for
names
sure. That's
and
why it's like, yeah, you don't have
uh,
to, yeah, you don't have to.
well, 'cause these are good stories to tell. So I
So,
was very close to purchasing somebody's business from them because they were ready to retire,
okay,
and I had done a lot to help save this business.
okay, yeah,
I had sacrificed my own time and my own money to help this person because they were in a bad situation
yeah.
financially, and I helped them. And then when it was time for me to get my portion of the business, this person turned their back on me,
Oh, that
and
is the,
almost
bro, that's the,
I lost almost $20,000 of my own money
oh,
in this venture and broken promises, and I got forced out of the situation. So that was a big learning lesson.
dude,
So that was one of those stories that is why I am a jaded
for
individual when it
sure.
comes to the music industry. That's why I don't really trust people because they will tell you whatever it takes because they need you for something. But the moment they don't need you, then they will turn their back on you. Another roadblock. This one hurts a lot too. Not as much as the financial one, but I was working with this artist, and
This happened before that.
no, this is after I had kids.
Oh,
Oh, are you talking about Lil
oh,
Baby?
little baby, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. This is all before the Lil Baby stuff.
No way. Oh, okay, okay.
This is like before. This is before I had actually really started rising the
Oh,
ranks.
damn. So
Like
this is
this would have
early.
catapulted. This would have catapulted. But yeah, this is early on in my
Okay, okay,
career.
okay.
This is when I had just gotten out of school. This is when I was trying to make my
Dang.
way and learning the ropes. And so by this point, my mentor had passed away, so I couldn't use him
Oh,
as somebody to give me advice on the situation. So I was kind of just flying blindly.
same
Just
dude from
he would have told me not to do it.
same dude from that.
The personal training client. Yeah. So normally, whenever I had
Oh,
some kind of business
yeah.
opportunity, I just take him out to lunch. I'm like, hey, what do you think? And I'm like, yeah, I don't like
What
that.
day? What I
And
mean, sorry,
so,
not what day, but
but
what year did he? What year did he pass?
I don't remember. It was
Or roughly,
before
roughly.
this situation.
Okay, okay,
Yeah.
man.
So I couldn't call on him to help me out with the scenario.
Yeah,
But it was just one of those lessons that I learned, and I moved forward, and it was a big hit, but I moved forward, and it was a blessing in disguise because if I would have took over that business, it probably wouldn't have done so well. In hindsight, it probably wouldn't have done so well, and so
wow.
I might have dodged a bullet on that.
Yeah, I was just gonna say.
But
That's what I'm saying. That's another. That's what I'm saying. You don't know what you don't know sometimes. So it's like, and I'm sure you were
yeah,
super down at the time, but now that we zoom out,
yeah,
this is years later, you know, thousands of dollars later, maybe even more than that, and then it's just like, man, that was actually a great thing that happened that I didn't, get whatever, and I think
yeah,
that happens all the
yeah,
time in our lives, and so it's
yeah,
like, oh, man, that's amazing. Sorry, go ahead.
yeah. Yeah, and the other one, this is more like actual music related. I was working with this artist, and he probably to this day is still one of the most talented artists that I had worked with. But when I was learning how to get into the music industry, I was warned that typically the ones with the most talent have a lot of the most personal issues as well.
I
So
could see that.
usually, the more talented they are, the more fucked up they are. Is really
I
what it
mean,
comes down
I
to.
think
And
you.
this kid,
I think just people like I feel like Kanye is probably one of the most talented people out there. He's might be
yeah,
the poster child for
yeah,
literally what you're kind of talking about. So,
yeah.
or
So this kid was super talented. He was so talented. Still to this day, I would say he's probably the most talented artist that I've worked with. He could rap and he could sing, but he also had some character flaws that I
dang,
was worried about because what had happened was I was in the studio with a big artist, and this kid ended up I don't know how he got to the session, but I introduced him to a friend who owned an independent label. He saw the talent in this kid, wanted me to work with him. I said no, because I saw some red flags with this kid.
Yes.
But they were like, we will raise your rate. And I was like, okay, I'll do it then.
Yes.
But I was like, but I'm telling you the warning signs. And they're like, whatever, we believe in him. I'm like, okay, whatever. So we start working together, and he's super talented. He was rising through the ranks like so quick because he was that talented. And this independent label, they were putting a lot of money into him. They're paying for features, music videos, tours, all that kind of stuff. And his album to this date was my best work. It was what I put my heart and soul into, because I believed from a talent standpoint that he was that talented. So I put my heart and soul. I've never put this much effort into a musical project ever before then or after.
Wow.
And so, because this was supposed to be my calling card, this is before I had worked with a lot of big names.
Yes.
So this is supposed to be
another
my
catapulter,
resume.
like you were saying. This would have been
Yes. Yes. And during that time, because we worked on his project for over a year, during this time, other people were contacting me wanting to work. I'm like, sorry, I'm working on this project. You have to contact me later, blah, blah, blah. And so I had put other things to the side for this project. And then there was so much momentum behind it. He was performing at Showbox. He was going on tour, all kinds of stuff. He was going to label meetings, all kinds of stuff. And right before his album, like we had just finished the album, and I don't want to give out too much details because I want to protect him because he's a good guy. Right before the project, he sabotaged his whole career, and to the point where he got blacklisted from every venue in Seattle. He cut ties with me. Him and his manager they got too big-headed, and they started telling me that I needed them more than they needed me. Even though I was the one that introduced them to the independent label that they were working with. They had turned their back on the independent label, so the independent label cut them off. So they got blacklisted all in Seattle and through a lot of the industry. And so there was this project that I put all this work into that never got released.
Oh man,
and it's just sitting there, and it was a great work of art. And yeah,
there's some bangers in there.
Yeah, there were some bangers in there, man.
Damn.
I'm not gonna lie, they were good. Nobody gets to hear it, so yeah.
You know, with you being in the industry, it's kind of interesting that you kind of mentioned a lot of like local places, at least to the Seattle, Spanaway, Tacoma areas, at least. Did you have to travel at all? Were you able to do your stuff? Like, where were you at when you were in the industry? Were you still in the local as far as Western Washington, or did you have to?
Yeah, so most of what I did was in Seattle.
Wow.
So after Robert Lake Studios, I spent about 5 years there after finishing school. But then after Robert Lake Studios, I went to Clatter and Din, which is downtown Seattle, and it's a block from Showbox Soto. And so that's how I was able to get a lot of the big artists, because they'd be at the Showbox. I'm like, hey, I'm a block away, just come to the studio.
Yes.
And so that's where I did a lot of the Little Babies, the Gunnas, the Moneybag Yo, Bone, all kinds of stuff.
Dope.
So I did all that stuff there. But then I realized that I reached probably like my peak as far as what I could do in Seattle. I couldn't really do any more in Seattle. So I felt like I had to go out. So I started going down to LA, and that was kind of when I started to realize that I don't think I wanted to be in this industry anymore, because as much as I loved working and being in the city, I'm a country boy at heart. My dad's from Baton Rouge, Louisiana. I grew up on a farm, so I carry a lot of that in my blood. I like to be out in the sticks. I like to go on hikes. I like to be out in the forest. I like to be away from people.
That plus your age, how old were you when you were in LA, when you started going to LA?
I started going down around like 35.
Yeah, there you go. That's like.
And so here I am in Hollywood. I don't really like it. And, my wife, she's a trooper, man. I love her to death. She put me through school. She supported me this whole time.
Dope. Wow.
Even though she didn't really like me being in the industry, she was my number one supporter.
Wow. Dope.
And when we had to talk, because, what's difficult is, I was trying to raise my income every year. As you're getting older, you want to make more money.
For sure.
But my clients didn't want to pay that, because Seattle, they can't really afford that. Right. And so I started talking to some connections I had. I have some connections down in LA. They're like, dude, if you start working here with your talent and your resume, you'll instantly make double what you're making up there. And so they're like, if you could actually be in LA, we can get you jobs.
Double.
Twice as much. So I started talking to my wife. I'm like, hey, I have legitimate connections at, major studios, major labels. I just have to be in the vicinity of those places when those opportunities arise. It's just they can't call me like, hey, I know you're in Seattle. Can you be down here like in 30 minutes because we have an opportunity for you? That's how this industry works. Is these opportunities they happen like right away, and so they can't wait for me to hop on a flight, get down there 6 hours later, right?
Yeah.
And so I talked to my wife and she was down for it. What we had agreed was that I would start flying down there. I started flying down there a couple of times a month and started, kind of hanging out and kind of, checking out the scene and seeing if I really wanted to be down there. And originally the plan was I was going to move down there for a year or two without the family, set up roots, and build the foundation. And then once I could afford to move the family out there. But just in that time of me catching flights down there, I saw a side of Hollywood that made me realize I did not want to bring my family down there. And it was also something eye-opening for the industry. I was very fortunate to be in the studio with a really prominent producer who's worked with Drake, Rihanna, Jay-Z, you name it, all the big names, right? If I was to play you the songs, you would know those songs. You would be able to sing them. Right. And so I was very fortunate, a friend of mine was like, hey, I want to introduce you to so-and-so. If you can fly down here, you can sit on a session with him and he wants to work with you, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, great. So I fly down there and it broke my heart because, I'm in the session and we're hanging out and this client was not good. The artist was not good. And it broke my heart because the producer was convincing the client that he was good.
Whoa.
Because he wanted the money. Right?
Damn. Yeah.
And it was really hard for me to digest because I'm thinking, wait a minute, you've worked with Chris Brown, Drake, Rihanna.
Yeah.
You
know this dude isn't that good.
You still have to work with this client so you can keep up with your lifestyle. I thought I only had to do that because I was in Seattle. Because the thing about, being up here, to pay your bills and to be a full-time producer, you have to work on projects that you don't necessarily agree with, that maybe you don't think are that good, but you have to do it to pay the bills.
For sure.
So I thought once I got to that upper level that I wasn't going to have to do that anymore. I thought it was just going to all be Rihanna's and
stuff
Drake,
or at least stuff that you feel comfortable with, that you believe in, that, doesn't even have to be that level. It's just like,
but it's still good music.
Exactly.
So that's what I was hoping. But then when I was sitting in that session, I'm like, this guy's got multi Grammys, platinum plaques, the shit that I would fucking kill for, and he's still working with a shitty artist to pay the bills. And it's like
you said a very interesting thing though with this story specifically. You said to keep up with his lifestyle. What's funny is like he probably wouldn't have needed to have that client at all if he didn't really have such an extravagant. Because I feel like, man, if there's a place to have an extravagant lifestyle, it would be LA. LA, New York, or it'd be the two places where people would. It's just it's the lay of the land. Is like you're spending money when you walk outside. So that's just how it goes down there. And so maybe if he didn't have, I'd maybe add Miami too. But like it like that's what's so funny, because it's like maybe if you weren't having such a crazy lifestyle, then it's because that's how I would look at it. It's just like, man, I could use this money, but I don't need it. So man, I'm thankful that
that's what's hard about the industry, and that's the trap that you get into. Because even I started getting into that trap. This is how you attract your clients.
Yeah.
Right. So like, you could say you want to save that money, but by you driving a Lambo, you now attract a higher clientele. By you going to that private party that that you pop bottles at, you got to pop those bottles so that you can schmooze the manager of the client that you're trying to close. And so that's what I would do. I'd have to go to these parties, and these parties, I'm a guy. I have to spend money. Like girls don't have to spend money at these parties, but as a guy, you have to spend money, And so it's like,
okay.
That's how you
break down. Okay, you get invited to one of these parties where you kind of have to show face now. Like, man, you leave your place, and let's put up like a ticker of like the amount of money that you have to spend on like just maybe your average or any kind of night that you're like going out. What's that look like? So like
it just depends on where you're going and what you're doing.
You're doing expensive stuff. Like, let's just take it to the max and be like, this is one of those parties where you're kind of pissed because you have to spend a hell of money and you don't really want to be there. But like, let's just play the game and see how. Because me being such a cheapskate too, I could just squirm and just be like, dude, I can't believe I have to spend money on all this. And so it's like the one time that I went to this pool party in Vegas to meet up with some people I wasn't even really that tight with. And it was just like, man, it's crazy. Cause like, it would have been better if we had just gotten like a day bed or like a reserved an area, but just being in there solo, it's crazy how like starts stacking up. And I was like, man, I haven't even got my first drink and I'm already out $300. I was like, I'm down $300 and I haven't even, I'm not even in the pool yet. And I was just like, so I can only imagine like these events get stupid like that. Like, give me an example of like what one of those parties would be like. And like, what do you...
I want to be very transparent. I'm a cheapskate too, and even my best friends.
I think it's a Spanaway thing too, though. I think it's also kind of like
my industry friends know this about me. They know I'm not going to spend money to go out. I hate going out.
Yeah,
but they would drag me out, and I was very fortunate that I had friends of friends
for sure
that had to do this for what they do, so I could kind of like tag along with them
for sure.
So I personally didn't have to spend this kind of money, but I will give you an example, right? To get to these parties, right? You know, let's just say it's a private rooftop party on top of some kind of building, right? It's a private rooftop thing going on, right? As a guy, if let's just say me, myself, I'm a nobody. I don't know the door person.
Don't know nobody.
Know the promoter. I don't know anybody. If I want to get into that party, I have to spend probably $1,000 just to walk.
What? No.
So
damn, just walking in. Well,
luckily,
it makes sense though. It's a private party though, right? So you're really not supposed to be in there. So, but if you do want to go in there, the price tag is $1,000.
Because if you're spending $1,000, that means you got more money to spend on alcohol and
damn, this is something, man. This is game too. You're putting people on game, Chris. This is dope.
And so, okay, so let's just say I do know somebody. Right, my friend knows the promoter. Well, these private parties, they're not like big venues with thousands of people.
Sure.
These are private,
intimate,
private things that they don't want a lot of people because they don't want a bunch of cameras. They don't want a bunch of people, posting on social media and stuff like that. So they are very selective on who they let in. So if it's just me and my boy, we're two dudes. These parties, they want females in there. Let's just be honest. They want.
It looks better for the Instagram. It looks better for the It looks better for whatever. Even if you're just doing private pictures and it looks way better. They
just don't want a bunch of dudes in there. That's just how it is, right? So if it's me and my guy, we're already messing up the ratio. So the way that we have to combat that is we now have to bring a group of girls with us.
Okay,
and we have to bring more girls than there are guys with us.
Yes.
Right?
So the ratio has to be there has to be at least 3 minimum girls with you for the 2 guys.
Yes. So now let's say there's 3 or 4 guys, and now we got to bring like 6 to 10 girls with us, right? These girls are bougie. They don't want to just show up to the club. You got to actually pick them up. So you usually have to send a car to go pick them up.
Oh my
God!
So
you have to pay for the car to go pick them up, but they don't want to just get picked up. They actually want to go eat at Tao's before they go out.
Oh my God.
And you have to pay for that dinner for them to eat because they know the game. These girls they're professionals. They know what they're doing. They're not going to they know the game of the clubs down there. And so you got to pick them up, take them out to eat, and then they'll go to the club. And guess what? When you're at the party, they don't want to just stand on a dance floor. You now got to have a section for them to sit in. So now you have to pay a couple $1,000 to have the section for them to sit in.
So wait, are these industry chicks? Do you pay them up front, or do you pay them at the back end, at the end of the night after everything's gone down? Or
no, like there's different levels of girls. So we're just talking about the girls that just want to party.
Okay,
right? So they're not getting paid. They're just getting.
You still got to pay for the stuff that they're doing, right? See, somebody's got to pay for the towel.
You got to pay for the
You got to pay for the car, and then you got to pay for the bottle service.
And then now we're paying for the section, paying for the bottle service, and the bottle service itself can be a couple grand.
Also, I see. So they're just tag-alongs. They're not being paid themselves, but everything is being taken care of. So they're just, you have to pay these things along the way, which is funny because you brought it up first because you're a dude. And so it's like, damn. That's crazy. Okay, no, man, this is educational. This is very interesting. No, like it makes sense. It makes
But
sense.
the thing that it gives you access to, you're now in a private party where this is a famous actor right there. Like, I could literally touch this
For
person right there, and
sure.
he's a famous actor. There's these models that I've seen on the covers of this right there. There's so and so right there, and I
Billionaire,
just dapped him up. I just dapped him up because we're drunk and we're popping bottles together, right? And I got
Yes.
6 chicks with me, right?
Yes.
And so that's what you're paying
Oh
for,
my
and
God.
so if you can
This is so
justify
good.
it. But for me, I'm married and I got 2 daughters. I'm not trying to take any of these girls home. Like, I'm there just to network.
Yeah.
And so for me,
Yeah.
I'm not spending thousands of dollars on these girls,
Yeah.
to just try to
To
meet
go.
that guy,
Yeah.
So
No, that's what's so interesting because there's different levels, right? You were at one point, it was like you were doing the what's it called? The or trainer. You were a personal trainer, and then that introduced you to like one level, and then like there's the LA thing, or now you have to try to get into private parties to basically kind of do the same thing, where it's like it's both kind of networking in some way, and it's just like a different level of networking of like how you have
yeah,
to, man, that's so crazy. Like with the, okay, now that you've kind of been in the music industry and you've seen different types of like jobs that people have in there, obviously you liked what you were doing because you had the skill set, you had the training, and you had the years of doing your thing. But now you're able to kind of see like some of the other jobs that like other people have had in specifically the music industry. What are some jobs out there that maybe people don't really know about that's like, man, that's a dope job to have? And then maybe explain what that person does. And then also maybe like the total opposite out there. What's the shittiest job in the music industry where it's like, dude, that job sucks? And it's like,
it really comes down to your personality type.
oh, true.
Like, for the examples that I give, it might be the shittiest job for one person, but it might be the best job for another
Oh,
person.
yeah.
As far as like good stuff, I mean, there's a lot of great jobs. It really just depends on who you are and what you like to do. That's what's great about the entertainment industry is, like, if you could find something, I would think like marketing seems kind of fun because you get to kind of create like the aesthetic of the artist. You get to kind of create like a plan for how you're going to roll out their album, and you're not so involved in the creative process of the album itself. But once the album's created, now you get to create something that helps get it out. I feel like that would be a little fun. um,
That would be fun.
yeah, I mean, I what's hard is you're asking somebody who's extremely jaded from the industry,
True.
and a lot of the people that I know that are high up in the industry, they don't necessarily like their job
Really?
because of what they have to do. They don't enjoy their job, but they enjoy what their job brings them.
Explain
And so
that.
it's kind of hard to explain. Like, let's just say you're a manager of an artist, right?
Okay.
Managing an artist isn't it sounds great, but you're a babysitter,
Oh,
and
damn. Damn. That's a
you're,
great
you're
explanation.
babysitting a 23-year-old that has more money than he knows to do,
Yeah.
and nobody tells him no. But your job as a manager is to tell him no all the time.
That's so good.
So
Nobody tells him no, but your job literally is
yeah,
to tell him no. So, no,
yeah.
that's so
So I
good.
mean, it looks good on the outside, but like there's a lot of those positions where it's like, it looks good on paper. It sounds great to be in this position,
But
and you like what the job brings you
yes,
for your
now that
life,
makes
but
sense now.
maybe the job itself isn't the best
Perfect
job.
example. No, that was a perfect example because now it makes sense. It's like, oh yeah, I'm so and
Yeah,
so's manager, and then when when it comes to like breaking it down, man, it sucks being the manager because you got
yeah,
like you said, you're a babysitter 24/7,
yeah.
nonstop,
You
all
got
the
to pick that
time.
phone up at 3 a.m. if they call. You got to pick it up.
Exactly. Exactly. Hey, I just got arrested, blah, blah, blah. It's just like, dude,
Yeah,
anything can happen. That does not sound fun. But it sounds fun on paper and it probably looks
yeah,
cool on all the socials. But like, man, when you break
yeah,
it down, it's like, dude, is it
yeah,
really that
yeah.
good? So, nah, man, that's That's dope. And then, so like, how were you, if you're willing to share, like, man, so you were talking earlier about like, man, transitioning out, right? It's like, okay, you just don't really want to be, you don't want to be in LA, obviously, like you're kind of getting these wake up calls and like, man, like, yeah, how were you able to transition out of that? So do you still do music today at all? Or do you do it on the side? Like, how
I
does
don't
that
really
work?
create anymore.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't really create anymore, but I'm more of a mentor. So
Dope.
I didn't want to just throw away everything that I had worked to build. And so now my purpose in the music industry is to pass everything along to the next generation. In any connections that I have, if I feel like somebody can benefit from it, I will go above and beyond to help this person succeed if I feel like they deserve that kind of access. And so I'm part of the Recording Academy, and so I'm a mentor through them, and I serve on the board, and I do anything I can to help out the music community still. But I don't do work though. I don't actually work on songs
Have,
anymore.
have you thought about doing like consulting at all?
I've thought about it. A couple people have asked me about it. People in Seattle aren't going to pay for it.
Oh,
They're
yeah.
gonna, yeah. So there's not. It's I don't know how to explain it.
I think
It's like
consulting's one of those
yeah, the
things
social
though.
media.
Like you don't have to like, I mean, you could be in, I'll chop it up with you after. I think there's a way.
Yeah,
I think there's a way. I don't think your main clientele, I don't think you would want them to be in Seattle anyway.
yeah,
And it goes back to kind of like what you were saying, like, you know, when you were producing, you could get paid double in LA, but you don't have to be there. And I think consulting's different from like actually
yeah.
producing and stuff. Like, you know, you could,
Well, see, this is where it gets hard because like you're not the first person to talk to me about consulting.
yeah. I just like that business
I
model.
will just yeah, I'm just gonna throw it out there that I'm extremely jaded from the music industry.
And you've said it multiple
So
times too. So no, that
because
makes
I am because I've been burnt so much from it,
true.
and I put so much of my life into it. And to be honest, some of the biggest artists that you know of, they are miserable. I get
That's
to see them
crazy.
behind the scenes, and you think that they are loving life, and they hate life. You just don't get to see it. And so, the hard part about consulting is, and this is what I struggle with even just being a mentor.
Yeah.
If I get some young kid come up to me saying, "Hey, how do I be successful in the music industry?" My first instinct to tell them is to don't do it. Go open up a franchise. Go open up a Subway, put money into a McDonald's or something.
Yeah.
Invest in stocks or something. Do not get in the music industry because the success rate is so small.
Yeah.
It is so small that it's most likely that you're not going to succeed, and you're going to waste these 10 years and thousands of dollars to not make it. I've seen it so many times.
Damn.
For every artist that I've seen get signed, I've seen thousands and thousands not get signed. And even the ones that do get signed, most of them get shelved. So for every Drake or Taylor Swift that you see, there's millions of artists that lose a lot, and they sacrifice their whole life for it. So for me to become a consultant, it almost seems contradictory to what I believe personally. And so, because I have been put in that position where, like, especially when I was like really starting to rise up to the ranks, when my social media was popping, I was having random people from around the country just DMing me like, "Hey man, I'll do whatever it takes to succeed. I can't even put diapers on my baby sister," like shit like that. I'm like, bro, go get a job.
Yeah.
Don't do
something else.
Go get a job. Do not do music because your sister's still not going to have diapers for the next 10 years. So, and yeah, so that's always been my struggle with the consulting.
Because just randomly, like, man, I just know, just like random, like, for example, like, do you have background, like, would you be able to help people that like maybe don't do like the same type of music you were producing, or were you producing all different types? Can you do like country or indie rock? Can you like do you do any of that other types of stuff? I'm curious like how that works.
This is where the label producer gets a little muddled, but I could technically produce most types of music.
Okay.
Being a producer is more a project manager. You're managing a budget, you're managing studio time, you're managing personnel.
Wow.
Right. But as a creative, I mostly did hip hop stuff.
Gotcha. I see.
So,
that's perfect.
Yeah.
That's differentiation for people to kind of understand that.
So if somebody from a different musical genre was to come to me, I might not be an expert in that genre.
But you could still produce it.
I could still help them with certain aspects of it. I might have to bring in a co-producer that knows the genre, but I could still lend my industry expertise to the equation to help it succeed.
Oh man, that's dope. Okay, man, as we Man, that's so interesting, man. I'm just like that's so like interesting, just kind of like the ins and outs of like how you were able to navigate through some of that. And I think I asked a question about how like you transitioned out. Did you answer that? Did you get through that?
Not
Oh
quite.
yeah, yeah. Here, I'll
No,
let you
not
finish
quite.
because now I'm trying to think of like, oh yeah, because I was gonna ask another one. I was like, hold up, did he? No, my bad. Go ahead.
No, no worries. Yeah, for and this is the part that I'm actually more excited about. So, I like I said earlier, there was about a 3 year period where I didn't want to be in the industry anymore, but my
Yes.
skills didn't really translate anywhere else. So I was
Yes.
having a hard time of figuring out what I wanted to do because I'm damn near 40 years old and all I've done is music and I don't want to be a personal trainer again. And then COVID hit and it completely shut down the entertainment world. And I remember it was March. I'm sitting at home and I realized that I'm not an essential worker and nobody needs a music producer when there's a pandemic. And I
Yes.
kind of took that personally. And
For sure.
anybody that knows me knows that I like to be in the mix. I like to be on the front lines. I like to get my hands dirty. So, I was very lucky that, Wally.
Yeah.
So he became a firefighter a few years back and he had been trying to convince me to do it. And I kept saying no, because this is when I was in the peak and I was like, nah, man, I'm good, man. And he kept bugging me. He's like, hey, you need to become a firefighter. I was like, nah. And then when the pandemic hit, I'm sitting there at home fucking watching news, about the pandemic. I'm fucking pissed off because I ain't got no job, just sitting at home. Me and Paul got on the phone. And I was like, hey, man, are you working? He was like, hell yeah, I'm working, man. We're fucking essential workers. I was like, shit. And he through a series of phone calls, he convinced me to become a firefighter.
Wow.
Thankful to him, I ended up pursuing that career,
That's
and it
dope.
was the best decision of my life.
Man,
And
that's dope, man. That's
yeah, man,
awesome. Yeah.
it's completely opposite of the music industry.
Yeah. Tell me about it.
With the music industry, like, especially as my daughter started getting older, I felt guilty because I didn't want to bring them to the studio. They wanted to know what I was doing,
Oh,
but I
yeah.
didn't want to bring them to the studio because I didn't want to be around all that bullshit.
Yeah. No, man.
And even like when I got this plaque, like, everybody was so excited for me. We were celebrating, and my daughter goes like, "Hey, what's that? What's that award for?" I was like, "Oh, it's a song that I worked on with an artist." She's like, "Oh, who?" And I was like, "Oh, Little Baby." She's like, "Oh, can I hear it?" And I was like, no, because that song is literally about strippers and cash.
Oh, see,
It's
yeah,
like you're not watching that video.
for
And for
real.
me, that was kind of like a moment where I realized, like, damn, I can't even celebrate some of my biggest moments with my family because I don't want them to be a part of that world. And what good is it for me to have a career that I can't even involve my kids with? And
Yeah, for
so,
sure. That's
now
crazy.
getting into the fire service, they were so excited for me as I was going through academy and everything and learning everything, being able to bring them to the station, sit on the
From
truck, take
stripper poles
pictures.
to firefighter poles, man. That's crazy, man. That's crazy. No, man, I love hearing how you're, just even you talking about you being a dad. Like, what's that like, man? Like you growing up with, being mixed race and or just being a kid back in the 80s, 90s when we were kids. Basically, we're the same age ish. What's that like now? Like you being a parent compared to how your parents raised you? Are you very
Yeah,
similar to like how your parents were, or are you?
I mean, I'm a blend of, my dad was hardcore black kid from the South. My mom is strict Asian lady from Korea, immigrant. And so they had different ways of raising us, and I kind of took in the best of both. But
Nice.
I also have to adapt a little bit because the world that my kids are growing up is not the world that I grew up in.
True that.
And as much as I want to be hardcore the way my dad was, some it works in some areas, but it also doesn't work in other areas. So me growing up in the military, being very militaristic, it works for certain things as far as discipline, structure, things like that. But as far as like I have to be a little bit lenient, with like with the computers and the tablets
I
and the
was just
phones and
gonna
stuff like
mention
that.
that the technology when our parents were raising us, they didn't really have to worry
Yeah,
about all the safeguards that you as
yeah,
parents today have to worry about with anything that has to
yeah,
do with getting out to the internet and the people. And so that's why it's
yeah.
like, no, man, that makes sense. No, no, that's
Yeah, and it's a struggle. It's a battle that you feel like you're always losing,
yeah,
and I just keep telling myself like I have to understand that their world is different than
for
ours,
sure.
and I can't just think about the way I was raised. And it's funny, I was just having a conversation with my daughter today. So she's been streaming on TikTok for the last couple months, because she plays video games. So she streams
Okay.
while she's
Yep.
playing, and she just broke 2,000 followers on
Uh-oh.
TikTok.
Yep.
She's starting to get like little sponsorship things sent her way and stuff.
Wow.
And I was like, when I was a kid, my parents told me to not play video games because I would never do anything with my life if I did that. And I was like, and that's one of those moments where I have to remember, like, as much as I don't want her to play video games all the time, like, she could make a career out of it. Is she going to? I don't know. But who am I to stop her? Even though I don't agree with it and I don't want her doing it all the time, why would I stop her? Because in her world, there is a chance for her to make money doing it.
1,000%. There's this 19-year-old kid that threw out the first pitch for the Oakland A's this last week. I just saw it on because I follow this kid on social media, and I was just like, he's like 19 and he's like a millionaire, and I think he plays like 1 or 2 video games. Really good though. He's like, that's what's so crazy. It's like he's not like and I guess that's kind of like any kind of skill set. Like he's just really good at one game, but like that pays. That's crazy how that can be a thing. And so, nah, man, just that opportunity that like these kids have, like, dude, that's crazy that your daughter even has 2,000 followers. That's more followers than I have on TikTok. That's like 5 times more followers than I have on TikTok. So that's what's like, dude, man, it's amazing that how the internet is these days and how it's just set up. And there's obviously the things we were talking about that you're scared of and that you want to safeguard them from. But man, on the other side of that, the opportunity, dude, it's crazy. And then now you add AI and it's like, okay, man, that opportunity for everybody to do anything is just kind of through the roof. So
it is. It is.
So before we land the plane here, is there any like, man, do you have any like memories of like any old businesses from around the way from Spanaway that you remember that maybe isn't around no more, or just places that you used to like go to stuff?
Well, it's one that comes up. I never actually got to go into it, but Spanaway Speedway.
Oh, yeah.
So
I've never been there.
I lived kitty corner. Yeah, so that little deli mart on the corner of
20.
Yeah, so I lived
on, it's like 22nd
Avenue.
22nd, yeah.
20th Avenue, yeah, something like that. But yeah, I lived kitty corner from there, so we would hear Spanaway Speedway every weekend.
Oh, yeah.
The fact that it's gone now is just crazy to me. So for me, that was one of my memories of that place.
See, I lived off of 14th. I lived right next to Spanaway Lake. I lived right behind the where the football practice, where we would have our football practices, right on the other side of the fence. I stay right there.
Okay.
And I heard them every weekend. I heard you could hear it. Like, that's like, not too far, but man, I definitely, and it's funny that you say you've never been, because I've never been either, but it's like, hearing the engines though was kind of like a thing. It's weird. It's like, and it's so funny that that's one of the things that you brought up. So, and then if you could say anything to like maybe your classmates, especially the class of 2000, like I kind of mentioned, I brought this up in Ryan's episode of just how like you guys got screwed because of COVID for like your 20 year, right? So it's like, but I wonder if like and it's it's this year's almost ending, but man, this would have been a good year to have like a 25 year, especially because you guys didn't have a 20 year. So I always think that's something that I don't know, maybe you guys should think about. If not, I guess maybe wait till you're 30, but a 30 year. But is there anything you want to say to maybe your classmates out there? I guess it doesn't really have to be your year either. It's be whoever from Spanaway. Anything you want to say?
Yeah, man. I mean, I know I haven't seen a lot of you guys, but I hope everybody's doing well. I've been able to run a couple of you, but we've lost a few of us along the way, and I pray for them. And if we're still alive today, that is a blessing. So I feel like every day that we are alive is a blessing, and to don't sweat the small stuff and just enjoy each day as if you are blessed, because you are.
For real, man. No, that's, and then when you hear somebody talk about Spanaway or hear the term, the town, whatever, Spanaway, what does that make you feel?
Man, that's home. That's where I was raised. It brings me joy to think about the memories that I have from there, because that's, even though I moved around a lot, that's where I spent the majority of my childhood, and that's what shaped me into who I am today.
For sure. And then if you could,
Like, I feel like Spanaway was like the perfect blend of, we had to hustle, so we had the hustle mentality, but we weren't so caught up in the hustle that we couldn't go on to become successful later on in life. And so I felt like it taught me how to weave my way through the world with all kinds of people, because going back to what I said about junior high, about the different cultures, we learned how to be around different
oh
ethnicities and
yeah, I
different
think
types of people, because it was such a diverse
that's
area.
one of the strengths. So many people have brought that up on this show specifically. But I also want to say too is sometimes, and I think this goes for most people. Sometimes, like the mentality of a lot of people. I mean, this is for not just people from Spanaway, but this is just like all over the world. Is sometimes our thinking is just way too small. Like, and like we
Yes.
settle for small thinking just because we don't.
Yeah.
It's hard for us to imagine like crazy things, and then when we bring up like crazy ideas, which it might not be, our friends, our peers, our parents, our brothers, or people are just too willing to just kind of like chop our dreams down too. So kind
Yeah.
of like how you were saying with the English teacher, and it's just like that's the other thing I've kind of noticed is like, man, what could have happened if like more of us had bigger thinking? Because I feel like when I look back, there's a lot of us that thought bigger back then, including myself. And then,
Mhm.
like, as I got older, that thinking just got smaller and shrank and just kept shrinking and shrinking and shrinking. And now I'm like, man, now I'm trying to like unlearn all that small thinking stuff.
Yeah.
And so that's one of the things about Spanaway that is like, I love it, but like, man, is it also part of why some of us can't get out of our own way because of the thinking? So I don't know.
Yeah.
It's a semi philosophical.
Well, I feel that, like, you had kind of mentioned it, but I think it happens in every town.
For sure. No.
It's not
Yep.
just a Spanaway thing. It's the town that you grew up in.
Yeah.
And so I always tell young guys that I'm mentoring, like, hey, one of the biggest things that can help you mature and grow as a person is to move away from your
You're
hometown,
1,000%.
just to get away from the people that you went to high school with, because most of them are going to hold you back. And so if you can just get away from them, so that negativity doesn't creep in the back of your head, just get away from a little bit. Because I've noticed guys that, not just Spanaway, but like they grew up in their town, but they just continue to live there. They're still hanging out with the homies that they smoked weed with in high school. They're still doing the same shit that they've done, and it's hard to break out of that cycle, because you don't want to be disloyal to your
For
boys that you grew
sure.
up with, right? So if they call you, of course you're going to pick up the phone. That's your homie, right? But if you move 10 miles, 20 miles away, it's going to be a lot less likely they're going to hit you up every day to go smoke weed. So now you can go do your thing. You can focus on what you got to do and not feel bad about turning them down.
It's like that movie Good Will Hunting, right? So like in that movie, Ben Affleck and Matt Damon are like, they're homies, right? And like Ben Affleck is like, he's just like a laborer, but Matt Damon's the one that's really smart. And then like, what you call it, at the end of the movie, or sorry, spoiler alert, at the end of the movie, like Ben Affleck goes to pick Matt Damon up and he's gone. Like, and like, part of that movie was like, and Matt Damon's not sad. He's like, oh no, that's good. I want to see my friend get out of this town and do something bigger, and so I think that kind of reminds me of that thing. It's like, they were from the same town. They were kind of like doing the same job, but like Matt Damon felt this like loyalty to his friends, to Ben
Yeah.
Affleck, to like, no, man, I'm going to stay around and be here with you. And Ben Affleck's like, bro, you have the skills, the talent to get the fuck out of here. And you're still,
Yeah.
you shouldn't really be hanging out with us. And so I think, man, that was just like, okay, that's deep. That's basically kind of what you're talking about. And it's easy to
Yeah.
fall into that rut where and a lot of times it could be doing positive things too. But
Yeah.
like, I know there's a feeling a lot of us get where it's like, am I reaching my full potential? And it's like, and for me, I'd say no, and it's just like, oh, that stings. But then it's like, this is the other thing too. It's like, how old are you now? You just had your
43.
43rd birthday now. I'm 45. And like a lot of people would say, man, we're over the hill. Like it's all downhill from here. And like all this thing, like, oh man, I wish I was 20 years younger, or I wish I was even 10 years younger. And it's like, dude, I still feel pretty like young relatively, but I still feel like I have tons of great years left in front of me. So it's like,
yeah, I agree.
Right. So like another reason why I'm doing this is like to also remind our peers, at least in our age group that is watching this, is like, dude, there's tons of life left. Like you could, start a podcast that, you whatever, start businesses, start doing things, become, whatever it is. But dude,
there are so many examples of people that we think of as successful that didn't reach their success till their 50s or 60s.
1,000%.
And so it's like, why stop? Keep going.
Yeah, I think Colonel Sanders, I don't know why, but I always bring up him because he's like the most extreme example. But Colonel Sanders didn't start KFC until he was like 60. So like, and like, obviously everybody knows what KFC is today, but like, damn, imagine if he at 45 was like, or at 43 was like, I'm done, like, nah, man, he started KFC at 60 and now it's like this crazy, $100 whatever billion-dollar company now. It's like, man, dude, that's why it's like, just do actions and like, man, kind of see what happens. I think the worst thing to do is like overthink something, not start something. That's the one thing that just gets everybody, is like, everybody loves to be in the planning stage, and I've been there before, and it's like, dude, you just got to get in the doing stage and then just let shit happen and fall where they may. So nah, man, that's dope. Okay, to wrap this up here, if you could go back to the year 2000 and have a conversation with 17-year-old Chris Pack, what would you say to that person? What would that conversation look like?
Just do you. Don't listen to what anybody else says. Don't listen to that doubt in the back of your mind. Don't listen to the doubt from other people. Follow your dream and just do what you got to do to get there by any means, and you'll get there.
That's dope. Awesome, man. Hey, man. Well, I really appreciate you for jumping on the SwaySide Connection podcast today. And yeah, man, I think there's just some gems in here, and like really appreciate you sharing your story and like just everything about, like, especially about the music industry. I think you really opened up a light for people that I had a lot of questions about it, and you've answered a lot of them here today. And yeah, man, just thank you again for jumping on the show. And for you, if you guys made it this far,
man.
Yeah, man. And hey, if you guys made it this far, man, I thank you too, on top of me thanking Chris. Thank you guys for following. Yeah, thank you for just watching this far into the podcast, man. I really appreciate it. And we will see you guys all in the next one.
See you later.